Hello, my name is Kealoha, and I'm one of the members of the Book of Composition group. Thank you for hearing my story. Attach love to everything. Ask yourself, did I express love? Did I receive love? From Source. A few years ago, a woman named Ukulele unexpectedly came into my life. She offered me her gift of communication with Source, channeling a message that revealed a situation I had experienced prior to our meeting. It quickly became one of my greatest lessons. The channeled message helped me move through the experience where I had felt stuck. Source told me that being in a state of love or unity is the doorway to what we call heaven. Love is an essence that is like the glue or matrix or matter that unites us all together. Love is our essence. It is who and what we truly are. When we acknowledge the truth that we are all source, we acknowledge the truth that we are all love. This is what I needed to hear. I have learned this over the years in various forms or versions. I have shared this with others, but now I am learning to live it. This message brought me renewed faith, excitement, and hope for situations that had felt uncomfortable for way too long. My story is humbling, yet I vulnerably share all that I have learned, and if I can shed the slightest insight, then I hope you too may benefit from my experiences. Many of my dear friends knew me as the local spiritual leader at a church on Windward, Oahu in Hawaii. For over 2 years, I devoted myself to this small gathering of light-filled souls. It was there that I met some of the early gatherers of a spiritual sisterhood who share light and love in this book. Robbie walked into my life at the beckoning of Source. I had been desiring to start a Course in Miracles group at the church, but there was no available teachers. I picked up the ringing phone one day to hear her sweet Aussie accent, and I nearly dropped it when I realized she was answering my shout-out to the universe. Robbie explained that she was a long-time A Course in Miracles student and had written a book based on some of the Course's core principles. I immediately invited her to come and meet with me. When she first walked into my office, her shoulders covered in her long flowing hair, I saw a vision of an angel in answer to my prayers. I loved her immediately. Ironically, later I found out that Robbie had been given the name Anela by one of her Hawaiian friends. Anela means angel in Hawaiian. The following year, our congregation moved from a quiet street in a beach town to the hustle and bustle of a nearby town. The new location has become a place for many to grow and learn in love. I enjoyed my time as the spiritual leader, yet something for me felt unfulfilled. I became restless and needed change. However, I felt loyalty to my church family and wanted to maintain my supportive role in leadership. Then I received a call from our board president to come to an emergency meeting at the church. I could not imagine what it was about. My curiosity was quickly quelled when the board said I would no longer be the spiritual leader at my beloved church. I had been preparing for the upcoming Easter service and had no idea that this was my fate just days before Easter. Through my tears and dismay, I asked, "Who will lead the Easter service this coming weekend?" The board members looked around at each other in question. Then one of them said to me, "Oh, well, we thought you would want to do that since you've been preparing for it." I was stunned at that assumption, after having just been told I would not be continuing as their spiritual leader. Through my anguish and bewilderment, I blurted out what my heart felt. How could I possibly stand in front of my beloved congregation and give them the loving service they deserved, knowing I was leaving them, and not by my choice at that moment? Or so I thought then. I went home and sobbed. I tried to understand why I had been let go from a job that I had lovingly served in the church community to the best of my ability. There had been no indication of any serious problems, so it was a shock. The irony of all this happening during the Easter season was not lost on me. This was my crucifixion. I was playing many roles here. I had a feeling of having been betrayed, but not sure of what. I knew I needed to forgive myself for not paying attention, for not listening to that still small voice within that had been prodding me to make a change. I prayed forgiveness for any wrongdoing or failings on my part, and I knew I needed to forgive others I thought had betrayed me. Ultimately, through Ku'ule's channelings, I learned that this event had been a part of a greater gift toward my own spiritual growth. If it sits well in your heart, it's your truth. Don't embrace something if it's not your truth. From Source. After departing the church, I spent some time in rest and recuperation and continued my first responsibility of overseeing the caretaking of my elderly parents, as I'd been doing for the previous 3 years. During this time, we also fixed up and sold the family home as they had to go into care homes. I worked for about 6 months at another job. It turned out not to be right for me, and I had no problem leaving it. The following year, my husband and I moved to a quaint local beach town on the east end of Oahu, where we had bought an espresso cafe and art gallery business. I was happy as new and exciting people and experiences were coming to me, and we loved this beach community and the cafe. However, I felt that something was still missing, and that sense of change and restlessness returned. I recognized the inner prodding, so this time I followed my guidance, and within 2 years of opening the business, we sold it. I didn't look back, as I sensed that all was unfolding for a reason greater than I could imagine. I had new inner spiritual information from which to function, as I knew Source was at work within me. At that point in my life, I learned that I just had to trust and follow my heart of intelligence. While I still owned the cafe, Georgia had beckoned me to join a study group called The Way of Mastery, which was meeting at my former church. Up until that point, I had not felt drawn to return to it. However, when Georgia told me that Robbie was facilitating the group, I felt a sense of safety and peace. Something told me it was time to return, so I said yes. It was great to see friendly and familiar faces. I was excited to see Robbie again and happy to meet her friend Aloha. As we joined in a circle and listened to the recordings from the original Way of Master lessons, the loving message that poured into me was incredible, to say the least. This class deeply resonated with my spiritual understanding of life, and it offered a fresh perspective and an insight into what I call the truth of what is. I became a regular at my newly found group and witnessed my soul reaching to unite and share with these other like-minded individuals. Robbie's style of facilitating allowed for all the attendees to share and shine we all did. Week after week, I witnessed courageous individuals finding their inner voices and sharing their truths. The Way of Mastery group felt like home, and our sisterhood merged before our very eyes. Over the following months, I formed a good friendship laced with respect for the new minister, and I renewed relationships with some of the members of the congregation, both former and new ones. Forgiveness deepened and prevailed, and I found much joy there amongst my friends once again. Around this time, Robbie and Aloha joined a women's group that I had begun holding at my home in Waimanalo. We called ourselves the Sisterhood and met on the weeks between the church meetings as we desired more soul exploration as women. A few months later, Robbie felt a gentle nudge from Source to hand over the torch for the facilitation of A Course in Miracles and began a new group called A Course of Love. With that book study and the Way of Mastery group, a powerful energetic shift became evident as other soul sisters came forth. CJ joined us, and not long after, Marianne and Karen also joined the groups. Who would have known that we were coming together, each summoned by the one true self for a greater purpose? I look back and see the early divine orchestration of our union of soul sisterhood, which was soon elevated to a whole new level a few months later when CJ introduced a woman named Ukulele to our Way of Mastery group. Through Ukulele, the rest of the sisterhood was ultimately brought together, who would ultimately write in this book. Ku'ulei had never attended a class like the Way of Mastery. She explained that upon hearing about us, she felt drawn to drop in on this group. She was looking for a place in a safe and supportive environment to share some information that had been coming to her over the previous 5 years. Shortly after our class ended that day, we were sitting around discussing the teachings. Ku'ulei began to engage with us. She shared some thoughts that seemed to align with the channeled audio recordings we had listened to in previous weeks. I thought it was a coincidence that she was saying almost exactly what the Way of Mastery had been teaching us. I soon discovered this was no coincidence at all. Ku'ulei usually arrived just as the second class was ending. If we were still in session and listening to the audio recordings, we noticed that she rarely paid attention and seemed to fall asleep. I thought, wow, this poor woman must be very tired. Others also noticed this behavior. As we came to know Ku'ulei, we asked why she seemed to go to sleep when the recordings were on. She told us that since she began her 5-year journey with Source teaching her directly, she was not able to read other books or stay awake during other teachings. The intention was for her to receive first-hand knowledge directly from Source. As I listened to stories about Ku'ulei's life, a clearer understanding developed around the experience of my own life. Ku'ulei had endured loss, ill health, and life challenges. By her own admission, she said she was a tough coconut to crack and that these tough experiences opened her up to truth. She said that sometimes we may need to be brought to our knees, maybe more than once, to soften and to be vulnerable enough to hear or see the messages of truth. I certainly felt that being brought to my knees was a good way of describing my experience of leaving the church, as well as a couple of other experiences in my life. All is here, earth is in heaven, and heaven is in earth, from Source. By the time I met Ku'ulei, I had found forgiveness of others in the way I was released from my role at the church, but I still held on to some guilt. I thought I must have done something terribly wrong to be dismissed, and often wondered what I could have done differently. I also felt guilt that through my departure I had let down my congregation. Those feelings were more difficult to release until one day, when a channeled message came through Ku'ulei and helped me to see the light and release this burden. When I was the spiritual leader, I was supposed to continue ministerial studies that would assist me in advancing my ministerial skills, ultimately leading me to ministerial ordination. At the time, however, I questioned my role as that leader. I was on my own deeper inner spiritual journey that seemed to be taking me in a slightly different direction. As I was also caretaking my ailing father and stepmother, I was feeling much stress. The thought of studying and advancing myself as an ordained minister didn't feel right. My heart was telling me to step down and that it was time to move on. But I did not listen, and within a few months, I was dismissed. Apparently, the board thought I should have been attending some specific courses. Source, through Ku'ulei, ultimately revealed to me that by not attending certain classes, I had created my own dismissal. By ignoring the classes and the inner message, I created a way to release myself from something that I no longer needed or even wanted to do. At the time, I did not know this is what was happening, nor did I consciously know I was actually working as my own source to help move my life along its path. The channeled message Ku'ulei shared with me illumined the fact that things do work out perfectly. Source told me that everything is always unfolding for our soul's growth to assist us on our journey, and that the dismissal had hidden treasures if I was willing to take the time to look within myself. Now I understand that it was indeed time for me to move on. If I wasn't going to follow my own heart to make that decision, then that decision would be made for me from my own creative source. If I had only acted upon my internal guidance at the time it was speaking to me, I could have avoided the discomfort and guilt of dismissal by others. Today, I know that this lesson showed me a better path to loving myself and others. Just a couple of months before the dismissal, I had prayed for deeper guidance and asked to know a deeper relationship with that energy that we call Source. I knew in my heart that something was stirring. Something was happening that was going to lead me closer to Source. In the channeling, it was revealed to me that my prayer had been answered, but not in any way I could have imagined. That channeled message also revealed that I was playing another little role in that church by coming back to it and befriending the new minister. We had some common experiences as a result of our training for leadership from the same teachers. Because of my knowledge of this church and experience in its ministry, I could be of unique support to him when he took the job of spiritual leader. I was told by Source that what happened to me would be of value to others. I could be a voice of wisdom through lessons learned through my personal experiences. A few weeks after that channeling, I found myself sitting with a friend who was going through a very similar experience in his job. He was feeling extremely challenged. I instantly felt to share the message I had received from Source. I told this friend that my greatest lesson was in listening to my heart, and that when I ignored the message my heart was giving me, it only made my situation more challenging. Ukulele often used the phrase, intelligence of the heart. I now know what that means, and I'm prompted to share that with others. The dismissal from my spiritual leadership role was a gift to awaken me to look within with different eyes and listen with different ears. My heart-guided spiritual eyes and ears. I feel gratitude for the experience and the people who played an important role in my life through that dismissal. They were helping me to receive a very important life lesson. The intelligence of the heart is the greatest gift of love and always knows what's best. Amen. Mahalo for listening. Kealoha.